Welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at seaborn in Python. But before we look at seaborn, I want to show you this. And this is some graphs by matplotlib. And you can see they're all right. But if we then look at some of the seaborn graphs, you see that these look a lot more impressive. And so I like to think that matplotlib does graphs and seaborn does pretty graphs. Because if you compare the two, the seaborn ones look a lot nicer and are better for data presentation rather than just quickly designing some graphs. So seaborn is a library for making statistical graphs in Python. It's built on top of matplotlib and it's closely integrated with pandas data structures, and you'll see why. So if we want to use them, then we can just install seaborn. And you see I've already got everything installed. So the first thing we want to do is import seaborn as SNS. And I find it weird that it's SNS because there's no second S in seaborn, but this is standard. And we're also going to need to import matplotlib.pyplot. And we'll do this as PLT because that's what we usually use. So the first thing is we need some data, and seaborn actually has some example data, so we will just load this example data set, and it's called tips, and then we'll just print tips so you can see what it is. And you can see that this is a pandas data frame, and it's got some data in, and we could just print tips.info as well, and then you can see all the data about the tips. So you see that we've got all these columns. They all have 244 non-null values. The size is an integer. The total bill and tip are both floats, so continuous data, and then sex, smoker, day and time are all categorical data. And if we look up here, you can see the day is Sunday, Saturday, Thursday. The time is dinner. The other one is lunch. Smoker is yes or no, sex male or female. And size is an integer, and that's the number of people who came. So you can already see that pandas is playing quite a big role, and we haven't even done anything yet. So the first thing we should do is we should get a comparison. So if we do a histogram of the tips total bill in pyplot, and of course show it at the end, this is the raw matplotlib graph, and you can see that it looks pretty ugly. It works as a graph. You can see, this is clearly the modal category, and it's got this positive skew. If we do this in seaborn, then we do a dist plot, there's no T, and the data, and the X is the tips total bill. And you can see that we get this nice graph. And a few things, like it's got the bars around the category, it's a slightly different shade of blue, but also it's got different bins for the categories. But I definitely think this one looks nicer. You see this here, it says total bill, and we could change that by renaming the data frame columns, but for now we'll just leave it. But it turns out that in seaborn there are a bunch of themes, and the themes are paper, notebook, talk, and poster. So if you're doing a paper, you would probably use the paper one. If you're doing a notebook, you would use the notebook one, and so on. And so we'll say for theme in themes, we'll do this, but before we plot it, we want to set the theme to the theme. and I'll just indent this so you can see each one at a time. So this is the paper theme, this is the notebook theme, this is the talk theme, and the poster theme, and you can see here the text is a lot bigger. But generally I just use the default theme, and you can change them if you want. The next one I want to look at is a cat plot. So there we were plotting just one category and it was continuous data. But if we want to plot categories, what we can do is we can do a cat plot. And we can say the X is the day and the Y is the total bill. So we can see how much people have paid on certain days. And you notice there's a different format here. Here we've put the actual value, but then if we put the data is tips, you see that we can just select it more easily, and this is in many ways a preferred way of doing it. And you can see we've got Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and we can see the total bill, and it's automatically put in the different colours for us. However, we might be interested in changing the colour based on something else, so we can say the hue is sex. And now it's color coded in each different one, so we can see more data on the same plot. Another thing we can do, like in matplotlib, is a scatter plot. So we can do a scatter plot, and on the X we put the tip, on the Y we put the total bill, and we'll say that the data is tips. And you can see there's this scatter plot. But we can add even more data to this. So we can then say that we want the hue to be the day. And now it will be coloured based on the day. So you can see we've got Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, all in different colours. And then we can set the style equal to the time. So the X is a dinner and the circle's a lunch. And then we can even set the size equal to the size. This is a category called size. And you can see that all this data is shown on the graph. So we've got, for example, this one here. It's quite small, maybe 3 or 4. It's a Thursday and it was a lunch. And then we can see the tip and the total bill. It might, however, look nicer if we swap the tip and the total bill, because it makes a bit more sense for the total bill to be the X value and the tip to be the Y value. The only issue is here we've now got the legend covering up some of the data. So you can make up for it by saying that the legend is brief. However, that clearly hasn't made any difference. However, if this size, for example, went to 100, then it would just have a subsample of those. So as an alternative, we'll just flip back the X and the Y. And you can see now there isn't any data under the legend. However, the colours are quite interesting, and there actually turn out to be many different palettes we could use for the colours. You can even build your own, but we won't do that now. So there's deep, muted, bright, pastel, dark, colorblind. And so we can say for the palette, in the palettes, we display the scatter plot and we set the palette equal to the palette. So this is the deep one, and you can see the colours are not quite as bright as they were before. The muted one, again, there's a lot less colour. The bright is very overpowering. You can see, for example, the blue really stands out. The pastel looks like it's faded. The dark one, I mean, these are clearly all darker. And the colourblind one, if you were colourblind, you might not have been able to see some of the previous ones, but this one you probably can see because it's adjusted the colours in such a way. However, again, we're going to leave it as the default. There are other plots you can do. So we can do a cat plot. So this is for plotting categorical data. So we'll say that X is the day and the Y is the tip, and again, same data. So we can see on each day the tip as this kind of categorical plot. However, this time we can set the column equal to the time. So you see we've now got two separate ones, one for lunches and one for dinners. And I think that that's a nice way of showing more data. There's other data, so there's a box plot, and we set the X equal to the tip and the Y equal to day, and again we can separate by day. We'll set the hue equal to the time and the data equal to tips again. And now you see we've got these different ones. Here there's only one data point, so it's done a line. And you can see we've got some outliers here, and we can visualize our data. However, with the scatter plot, for me, it makes more sense to view it vertically. So we can set the orientation to V. However, because we've done that, we now have to swap our Y and our X. So now the X is day instead of the Y, so that we can view the data vertically. And it's the same data, it's just flipped it. There's also a joint plot, and here we can set again the X to the total bill and the Y equal to the tip, and again we'll use the data as the tips. And you can see nicely this time we've got all the data about the bill on the top in this histogram and all the data about the tips here, and you can see this kind of a hump in the bottom. And actually, if we then set the kind equal to reg, so it's going to draw a regression line now. And not only does it draw this regression line through the data, it also puts a curve over our histogram, which I think is really nice. So we can see the overview of the data, and it's kind of represented that curve with a small dip. We can also do a pair plot. So this allows us to plot every numerical data against every other numerical data, and we set the hue to the day, and you see in this pair plot we've got all the days as being different colours. Then we've got the total bill for the different sizes, the tip for the different sizes. So you can see people with 6 tend to pay more than people with 1 as their tip. And then it's got these histograms of the same data. So this is a histogram of the size, and you can see that there are this many with size 2 on a Friday. And then it's done the same for all the others. The only thing is, these two, for example, are the same because it's tip against total bill and total bill against tip. So we've actually got the data just duplicated twice, and these are all reflections of each other. So to deal with that, we can say that the corner is equal to true, and so it just puts it in the corner. So you can see we've got the data in the histograms and then this smaller amount of data plotted against itself. And I think that while there's a bit of open space here, this is easier to interpret because you don't have to worry about the fact that the data's all in there twice. We can also plot a different style of graph. So we can plot a KDE. And so this KDE plot has done the kernel density estimation. So it kind of thinks, most of the data's over here, and then as we get thinner, there's less and less data. And there's this dense region over here for people size 6. And we'll actually do KDE plots separately. So if we want to plot a hist plot of the tip and the y is the total bill, and we can then actually plot afterwards a KDE plot of the same thing. So if we look at the hist plot first, you see we've got these darker regions are where it's most common, and these lighter regions are where it's less common. But this isn't kind of too clear. We can see that there's no data over here, but how much is here is not clear, and we could put a key in. But I think a KDE plot is actually a nicer way of displaying this information. And you see, most of the data is around here, and it gradually gets bigger, and we kind of capture the rest of the data over here. So we cover most of the data. But the cool thing is with seaborn, we can just plot both, and it's overlaid the KDE plot with the hist plot. And that's really nice because we can not only see, oh, there's no data over here. We can also see that this covers most of the data, and yeah, it thinks these are outliers. And there are yet more ways of displaying multiple graphs, and one of those is a facet grid. So if we have a facet grid, and we're going to use tips as our data, we can set the column equal to sex, the row equal to smoker, and the hue equal to day. And then we can just put a scatter plot. So we're doing the map function of a scatter plot, and we want to put total bill against tip. And we can see, on these different days, we've got these different categories, and we can see, the tip against the total bill. There is one thing I want to do though, and that's put a key in. So we can just say g.add_legend. And now we can see which day is which, and unsurprisingly it's kept similar colours to before. We can actually expand on this. We can just, instead of having these, we can just change it with one line. So we can say the row is the time, column is the day, and the hue is the size. And this time it's done in a slightly bigger one. And that's obviously because we've got all these different days and only kind of 2 times. And then you see the size is plotted in the different colours. And so mostly you see we're getting 2 people. But one thing I want to do is actually take away the D-spine. I think it looks nicer this way. And this means we're going to end up with boxes. So you can see kind of before there was not this line, and I think it looks a lot nicer with this box around. So we've got these 8 different boxes displaying different charts, and I think that this looks really nice. It's a great way to visualize the data. You could do all of this in Matplotlib, but Seaborn is so much easier and it gives you a better result. So if you wanted to customize it, you can use both together, but it does look very nice. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video, learn a lot about using Seaborn, and I'll see you again same time next week. Till then.